Welcome to this week's edition of the 6-5 podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Newman, principal analyst and founding partner at Futurum Research, joined by my always esteemed, always with a slightly brighter screened podcast co-host, Patrick Moorhead of Moor Insights Strategy. Patrick, good afternoon.
Oh, it is a good afternoon because after the 6-5 summit ending yesterday, it was great to see how well it came off. You know, these things aren't perfect, but the team just kicked absolute butt. And the companies and the content, I've received a lot of compliments on it. I know you have too.
Yeah, it was a great event. And for anyone that missed it, it's not too late. We threw an event based upon our podcast here called the 6-5 Summit, and it's at the65summit.com. We kicked it off with a introductory warm welcome from none other than Michael Dell. And he had some great things to say, and I'd love to have heard more from him, but we backed it up. We brought in Lisa Su, president and CEO of AMD, superstar, rock star, and then Douglas Merritt from Splunk, the CEO of Splunk. So 3 big publicly traded CEOs kicked off our event, and then we added over 30 more sessions with tons of big companies. I won't over promote it, but would love to have you go check it out, www.the65summit.com. And we're going to do it again next year. So just a preface for all you out there listening and all of those great tech companies, you can get involved. But for this show, 6 topics, 5 minutes each, deep analysis, minimum news. We've got a great show. We're going to dive into a number of topics. Samsung's Unpacked this week. We had a bunch of earnings last week. We had some federal news from the Hill on big tech, a couple of other little announcements. So before we jump in, just a reminder for everyone out there, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, we might even talk about their stocks and their stock performance. We are not soliciting or offering any sort of investment advice. So don't buy any stocks or sell any stocks based upon our very smart and very sage recommendations. So Patrick, are you ready to do this thing?
My helmet is on. Let's do this.
My helmet, he says. I like it. All right, Pat. So I'll let you kick this off. I've been talking for a while, but I'll make you do the hard stuff. Samsung did their big annual Unpacked event, or actually it's usually about twice a year, right? And last time I think you and I were in the same building at the same time was at their last Unpacked. This time it was very different, but yet still quite eventful.
Yeah, earlier this year was my last business trip, which happened to be Unpacked in San Francisco. This one was obviously online. The new leader of Samsung Mobile, TM Rowe, kicked it off, and I thought, all in all, it was a good event. Some of the interesting things, and again, you can read the news anywhere, but they did do some interesting things, I think, competitively related to Apple. And I'm going to kind of go in reverse order of the way the news came in. Apple brought out brand new earbuds, basically called the Buds Live acoustic echo cancellation, which is the killer feature that the AirPods Pro has from Apple that everybody loves. I actually have a pair, and unlike my AirPods Pro, they don't fall out when I run, when I get all sweaty, and I think that's a definite plus. So as far as I'm concerned from a consumer standpoint, it's a 2-horse race right now in audio. What's not a 2-horse race right now in premium smartwatches is, our smartwatches, where Apple Watch runs away with the show on the high end, and Fitbit on the low end, and Xiaomi. But very similar to the Buds Live, Samsung brought out a very compelling Watch 3. And why is it compelling? It has some health features that Apple does not, namely blood pressure and VO2 max. It also does SpO2, ECG, in addition to things like sleep. Also, but not discussed a lot around the watch, is they have some cool alloys like titanium that you can choose from. So does Apple potentially have a run for its money on watches, high-end smartwatches? We're going to have to see. And very quickly, the company updated the Galaxy Note 20, which took a lot of the goodness from the Galaxy Galaxy S20 Ultra Plus. That was a mouthful, and added that to the Note 20, even taking it up a notch with even better focus for that insane 100x lens that it has out there, and even a better display. And finally, we got an upgrade to the Fold, which I have to tell you is the most exciting thing that I saw the entire show. All the chat, not the issues or things I didn't like, but the things that I thought could do better on the first Galaxy Fold. It's thinner. There's a smaller gap, 120 hertz. That top display is a full display now, not a half display. The battery life is better by more than a third. It's more durable. It has 5G. And we're looking less than a year ago that they brought out the first edition. So, Daniel, I know I was kind of a pig on this one, but innovation everywhere.
That's all right. I'm rocking a Samsung. I've got the 5G, the S20 5G. Still got the S10 Plus on the LTE. I've got my tools. I've got my earbuds 2. What's it called? What was the second version called? The earbuds 2. And I like those a lot. I still got to say, between all the buds, I can't find any that don't fall out of my ears when I run. I don't know. Like walking around on the phone, they're all really good. But when I need to start moving, I wish any of them would. I'm going to like tape them on around my head. Listen, I'll keep my comments short on this one, but Samsung continues to be a competitive force. Apple, nobody's doubting. We've seen how its prices rock. We've seen how even with what I would call somewhat late to the party technologies, people love it. People use it. People will put up with the abuse. They will put up with the lagging technology because Apple does have that ephemeral aficionado class. But Samsung's products have come a long way. And I will say, for me, the Fold 2 was the showstopper. I saw it. I want it. I'm going to buy it. Well, first, I'm going to beg Samsung to send me one. And if they don't send me one, then I'm going to buy it. But I want them to hear this. So if you heard this, Samsung, I'm not going to buy it. But honestly, that's a really cool device. Now, I will say, Pat, because we aren't traveling as much, I do wonder, because that was the most wicked device for on the road. But now that I'm home, I don't know if it's quite as cool. So Samsung, how about a vaccine or a treatment? You guys are big. Put the billions to work. Let's do it. All right, moving on. Second topic, Amazon earnings. Wow. What a absolute destruction of estimates. So first of all, Pat, just want to kind of preface this. We've done a few earnings shows now. We're kind of into the tail end of the big tech earnings season yet again. But last week was a huge one. With one day, we had Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, all on the same day. You and I were running around like chickens with our heads cut off, TV, radio, press quotes, and of course, trying to write and cover all this stuff. But Amazon, I think everyone expected tech to do well. Because if you haven't been through this quarantine and have not been ordering stuff from Amazon, then I don't know how you've been surviving. I don't. I don't think a day goes by that something doesn't arrive. So we thought it would do well, and it did. Almost $89 billion in revenue against a target of $81 billion. Wow, what a quarter. Now, the real mind-boggling part, though, was the profitability of the company. The estimated earnings, Pat, $1.46 a share. Do you remember what it came in at? I'm going to quiz you real quick.
No idea. I don't trade stocks.
$10.30 a share. It beat expectations by over $8 a share. So, of course, Amazon was over, Google was over, Apple was over, Facebook was over. Everybody beat. Tech is screaming. So they're doing well. Now, the one thing that was really interesting, Pat, going into this is we heard a lot about Amazon's making massive investments in its marketplace in sustainability and in COVID-19 optimization. And so a lot of the analysts, including I think you, but definitely me, all were suspicious that the margins might actually take a hit because despite the high revenues, I thought they were spending. And on top of the things I mentioned, also the same day shipping, enhancements in fulfillment centers, all the hiring that's being done, the improvements in infrastructure. And we'll get into AWS in a minute, Pat, but they've been spending big on AWS as well to optimize and grow that business. And all those, and that being a profit cash cow for the business, you're thinking, but here's a couple little things. And now I'm being a pig. But the interesting thing about the last quarter was people were spending on a lot more luxury goods.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the stimulus checks. I don't know if it was the extra unemployment. I don't know if business is better than we're hearing in the news. But the first quarter, Amazon's numbers were good, but the earnings were off because people were buying groceries. People were buying staples and necessities. This quarter, they're buying Lululemon pants and new Samsung phones and Apple earpods. They're buying stuff that's more expensive, and not all from Amazon, but just across the board. And that pushed earnings up. We saw the same thing with the iPhone beating estimates by almost 20%. So, and that's typically a number that they get really well. So I'll quickly touch on AWS and then I'll let you jump in because I know this is where you get most excited. But AWS, 29% growth. Law of large numbers, $10.81 billion in revenue. That is massive. You're talking about almost a $44 billion run right now. And this part of the company has been providing almost 77% of the bottom line to Amazon. So you think about Amazon and how big it is and how profitable it is, but AWS is the profit machine and it is the most robust business inside of Amazon. And while 29% might sound slowed compared to the triple digit and high double digits of competitors and itself in the past, that's a great number considering all of the economic circumstances that the company have been facing.
Yeah, it was incredible. And to your point about their mix shift, I had the chance to talk to Amazon's leader of Prime, Jamil Kahani, last week, and we chatted about this. And the company hired 175,000 workers, 175,000 workers that made it possible to not only get items above food and toilet paper in there, and the things that used to have a 2-week lead time on Prime went down to more of like a two or 3 days. So, and on your talk about earnings per share, by the way, that includes a $4 billion investment that the company made in COVID-19, which, by the way, 500 million of that were bonuses to workers. And some other really big highlights, I'll call them non-financial highlights. They sold more third-party products than first-party products. Okay, these are these small business sellers that we've heard of, and I know we're going to talk about at the end of the show. And finally, this quarter, they sold 3.4 billion in SMB products as well. So, it's funny. So many people try to put Amazon in a corner. It's all out for them, the richest man in the world. But I really feel like they're going the extra mile for their employees and their sellers. And obviously, we saw a 5% uptick, and their shareholders too. Kind of everybody's winning at this point.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of negative press, but not all of it is right, and not all of it is complete. But as we know right now, unfortunately, we pull snippets from data and we utilize it to validate our own points more often than we actually provide analysis on the whole picture. So hopefully those of you listening here realize that we like to talk about the whole picture, and there's always things that a company like Amazon can do better. But right now, when the economy is in the situation it's in, this company is creating a lot of jobs. In fact, I believe it's creating more jobs in the United States than any other company right now. So, And yes, not all of them are high paying, but even their entry-level jobs are significantly higher paying than a lot of the fast food and
$15 an hour,
which is the wage that a lot of people have been asking for to break in. So let's jump to the third topic. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, Pat.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more earnings, but let's talk about spectrum. Well, let's talk about connectivity. Let's talk about Qualcomm.
Okay.
All right. Pun intended. Since I ripped and roared through Amazon and didn't leave a lot on the bone, do you want to take a first stab at Qualcomm? Because
Absolutely.
All right,
absolutely. So pretty much everything was above guide. EPS was above. Revenue was slightly above the midpoint. And by the way, the market loved it, crushed it. They were up 9% after hours. And part of that was what I like to call the de-risking of the company or the stock. So they made an announcement that they have inked deals with every single. They have long-term license agreements with every single handset maker on the planet. And in the subhead of their earnings press release was Huawei, which was a big one. Also, what came in is they stuck to their guidance on 5G phones, where their profitability is 4 to 5 times that of, that's my estimate, of LTE. And oh, by the way, 63% of all phones sold in China were 5G. So don't get stuck on what you see in the United States yet, because we're still mired in this. But emerging regions are growing again. And the final thing, and then I'll hand this back over to you. Some of the declines that they had in some of their expansion areas, like automotive, were more than made up in the gains that they've made in their RF businesses. In fact, if I look at the numbers of the RF business, which was let out of the bag, it makes Qualcomm bigger than many of the largest pure play RF vendors. So you have a massive player in digital and analog whose analog business in RF smartphones is bigger than the pure plays. And I think that was one of the untold stories of the earnings.
and rapidly approaching the Broadcom numbers, eh?
Qorvo, Skyworks. I don't know. Those are even bigger businesses. Yeah, Broadcom's really focused on the Apple business, but it's that other 75% of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, like you said, came in above, solid. This wasn't an Amazon in the sense of blowing things out, but this was also a company that didn't have nearly as robust of a set of offerings for this COVID pandemic situation. But deep beneath the surface, the connectivity that we are enjoying here in the United States is really created in many ways by the technologies that have been developed and rolled out through 3GPP, 4G LTE, which is what many of us here in the US are using still, 5G. And Qualcomm is the technology that powers many of the devices, if not most, and of all the high-end ones, almost all of the devices. And then you add to that, the work from home, the opportunity that 5G is going to play to deliver high bandwidth and throughput to people's home offices, to remote workplaces, to flexible work environments. The company's in a really good position. A couple of things that also caught attention was the company did, finally come to terms with Huawei, and that was a big deal. It was a little muted, but don't mistake that as not an important piece of news. Those two companies working together is going to mean very significant revenues for Qualcomm. The 5G licensing growth is fantastic. A couple highlights that I think were worth mentioning: 380 operators now in 5G, 35 countries that are launching 5G commercial services now, and over 80 operators doing that. 45 different handset makers now are using 5G devices. And as you mentioned, Pat, that 60+% in China 5G, pretty soon it's going to be over 60% of all of Qualcomm's smartphone, all the smartphone shipments that are using Qualcomm's technology are going to be 5G. That is going to lead to a big business. I've been saying in 19 that 2020 was going to be the year of 5G. I'm going to rewrite the article. 2021 is going to be the year. 2020 was a big move in terms of broad announcements, go live. But I think in the year 2021, as we get refreshed and as Apple does bring out its Qualcomm-powered 5G device, 5G will be here to stay. It will be the year of 5G. We also have a lot to talk about with the enterprise implications of 5G, but we're going to have to talk about those later, Pat.
Daniel, before we shift to the next topic, I have to bring this up. I was doing a little charting here. Apple filed its lawsuit against Qualcomm in January of 2017. On February 3rd, the stock closed at 52, and it closed today at 111. 111.39.
It's roaring. But don't buy it because of anything we said.
No.
All
But
right.
here, it is at the highest all-time ever.
It's absolutely
a
ripping.
lifetime stock out there, even bigger than 2000. Anyways,
speaking of stocks that are ripping, all right, fourth and final topic on earnings. So we have a couple more, but our final earnings, Pat. AMD firing on all cylinders. I wrote that article. I put that out there. Pat, I want to go first, but I'm actually going to hand you this one because I know that you love yourself talking about some AMD. Can you jump into this one?
Absolutely. Yeah, AMD ripped it. By the way, they're in an all-time high ever, even higher than when I was there. So sad. 26% growth overall, records in CCG, which is Client Computing Group, and servers. They had 45% growth in CCG with a big focus on how they're doing in Ryzen notebooks. And what's the driver of that? It's the new 4000 series, which I am hearing is super popular for back to school and even for the holidays. It's going to go head to head with Intel's new Tiger Lake that's going to come out at the end of the year. It's the highest client CPU revenue in 12 years and highest notebook revenue ever. Again, so sad. The prior record was when I was there. So that's okay. That's okay. I applaud the folks at AMD. I've been a little harsh on Epic revenue. They doubled revenue, and they had some big deals that we saw even announced this week with Google that looks like the company is getting a lot more momentum there. And of course, they increased their 2020 guide, which I think was a nice capping of there. So all around, really good. They rose, they increased its guidance from 25 to 32% growth. I think there's conservativeness in there, by the way.
Yeah, well, they're back to kind of their pre-COVID estimates, just solid. Not surprising for tech. Yeah. I am one of the hardest critics on AMD. And so it took a little bit of humble pie for me to swallow. I've said for a long time, I felt the company was a little soft in terms of being able to capitalize on some of Intel's, delays. And to this day, I'll still say that there's an opportunity for AMD to go even faster. But in a lot of ways, the company has been extremely successful. And what has been most impressive to me has been the accuracy in which Dr. Lisa Su has been able to forecast product, forecast growth, chart its success. And I even think her proclamation of double-digit market share for Epic was this quarter, which I think.
Yeah, how did I forget that? She said they hit it. I can't believe I forgot that.
Based upon new numbers, they hit it. Now, I'm still going to play skeptic a little bit because based upon Intel's growth numbers, because, well, again, remember, Intel missed on process, but did not miss on performance.
Oh, and yeah, long term.
The overall data center number in TAM, I think, has grown. And so my only thing I'd want to double spot check on those numbers is, are they looking at the right TAM? Because based upon both successes, AMD's tremendous success, as well as Intel's success in data center CPU, if they haven't shown reflecting a growth of overall TAM, the market shares could be off. But it's getting close, whether it is 10 or 9 or 11. AMD has really stepped up its feet. And that was a number that a lot of people thought was going to be the catalyst for a much faster acceleration in terms of capturing market share. I'm going to watch it closely. I don't think with Cooper Lake that Intel is as far behind as it sounds, because 7 nanometer versus 10 nanometer plus is not as different as people are making it out to be. But no mistakes here. AMD is executing extremely well. They're very focused. Their product line is much smaller, and they're able to be very good in Ryzen, good in EPYC. What they're doing, they're being very deliberate, and they're accomplishing it. And that's going to give the company the catalyst for growth. And their shareholders are loving it. That stock was just ripping this week and last week. I think it's,
I'm pretty sure
I've got a few Market Watch articles that I'm going to probably get some have to eat some crow later. But you know what? I call it like I see it. And when I saw it, that's what I saw. And right now, AMD is doing really well, and Intel is going to have to step up its game. Hey, I say game on, Pat. I love seeing innovative companies fighting each other to innovate and out-innovate.
Innovation, man, it raises everybody's game, and processors needed it, and they have it, and it is truly a game on here. And Daniel, as you noted, what was going on when AMD stock went up so much on Tuesday? I'm pretty sure I was interviewing Lisa Su on the 6.5 Summit, but I don't know. Okay.
I was trying to find a correlating data, could not, but nevertheless, that was a heck of a good interview. So don't forget to go check that out, the 65summit.com. All right, quick one here. So NVIDIA, so let's just, we'll stick with chips for a minute. So every year there's what's called MLPerf, which is basically the benchmarking for ML machine learning performance. And long and short is NVIDIA put forth, it's got its new A100 Tensor Core GPU. It's running on its DGX SuperPod, its supercomputer. And NVIDIA absolutely knocked it out of the park. So this year they lit 8 different categories, from image classification to natural language processing, reinforcement learning, object detection. NVIDIA won every category. And so long and short, NVIDIA maintained its superiority as the training, as the training processor company. And that actually, I don't think has been all that disputed. But what was most interesting to me this year, Pat, about its the recognition it received in its MLPerf is starting to dive more into traditional CPU workloads that are being done on the GPU. And with the frameworks, software, and hardware that NVIDIA is putting forward now, and they announced Merlin, Jasper, which are recommendation engine and natural language processing for inference type workloads. The company is starting to see more and more take on those products, challenging the status quo, putting more pressure on our friends at Intel, because that's really where they've traditionally shined in the data center, has been with the x86 CPU for inference. And so the 2 areas that the company got some really high marks on their MLPerf this year was in recommendation systems and conversational AI. The company on the recommender side is now working with Alibaba. Its technology is powering Alibaba's $38 billion single day sales record. And then on top of that, the company's got a whole bunch of partners now signed up to use its technology for conversational AI, which is the ultimate sort of next phase of AI in everyday interactions that we're having. So big overall, performance from NVIDIA. Not a lot of surprise here. My biggest thing for people out there is the CPU versus GPU for inference conversation is coming back. It's bubbling up to the surface, Pat.
Yeah, I was actually surprised, because NVIDIA keeps winning, and NVIDIA cannot possibly remain the only game in town forever. Google's TPU4 results were promising, and could finish it up, but it's not commercially available, which is why it didn't make the list. Also, too, Qualcomm is coming to town with its Cloud A100 design. And finally, Intel with Habana Labs and startup with Cerebras and GraphCore are making headway, but they didn't post any numbers, which was just a shocker.
Yeah, Pat. Like I said, this is just a really interesting area. There's a lot more players in town, but you're starting to really see Jensen and the team at Nvidia really put its weight behind the GPU and the GPU for all kinds of diverse workloads. Whereas for so long, it just wasn't considered for those particular, those particular types. And it's getting interesting. It's heating up. And kind of like I said about the AMD Intel, I just love this. I love seeing all these companies because all this is going to do for you and me is it's just going to push and push and push the innovation. So let's get on to our last topic here, Pat, because we're kind of coming up on time. This is a biggie, and we're going to have to kind of keep it high level because we could spend all day on it, Pat. But look, the regulators, for some reason, in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, in the middle of multiple a national election, an equality and injustice war that's going on in the world, decided they wanted to bring all the big tech companies to Capitol Hill to probe them for some reason about antitrust and anti-competitive behaviors. I'll quickly bite down on this. They brought the 4 companies the day before their earnings reports, which I thought was hilarious because if they brought them a day later, the conversations may have been completely different. Because wow, did they do well, all of them. But what's so interesting to me, Pat, is one, the timing, ridiculous. I could not get over the fact that our nation's leaders don't realize that, hey, why don't we try to get our schools open right now, or try to get this testing backlog down to 3 days, or work on this unemployment agreement and this benefits package for everybody. Because like I said, I think regulating big tech is something that has to be done on an ongoing basis, but I don't understand the timing on it. Second thing, I don't understand the 4 companies being looked at sort of equally. These particular legislators can't barely talk about any one of these companies well enough to yet talk to 4 of them. So you just heard the comments and just the ridiculousness of some of the questions, the mixing up of the products and services, the misunderstanding of all of their different confluence and influence over the markets. Amazon versus Google versus Apple versus Facebook, 4 completely different companies run with different set of values, morals, products, services. So it was absurd. It was a spectacle to me, if anything. And I just want to say, one of the ironies, Pat, and we talked about this during Amazon's earnings, was that while Amazon may be the biggest of the 4, I actually felt listening about all 4 companies that by far the company that has the least business being probed for anti-competitive is a company that essentially has a pretty free enterprising third-party marketplace, creates the most low-paying entry-level jobs in the country, is growing at scale, putting workers out in trucks, putting factory workers out there, helping small businesses to build, online storefronts. I kind of didn't get it, that particular one. I get the fact that it's so large that it needs to be discussed, but between that versus a controlling search, or controlling information, or controlling applications that people are allowed to use, versus just a really successful, really big e-commerce company, Pat, that was a weird one to me. What do you think?
So I summed it up, and I'll kind of riff off what you said. I said on Twitter, the big difference between all these companies that were up there and Amazon is, first of all, Amazon has single-digit market share in U.S. retail, compared to the share that the other companies have in what they do. Amazon actually creates direct jobs, 175,000 since March. And I would say that Amazon is a big risk taker. And I know that this probably doesn't matter on Capitol Hill, but we cannot stop rewarding companies for taking these massive risks. And if they're successful, that the thought that they need to be punished. I mean, think about this. Amazon was a bookseller, and they popped out AWS, which we talked about earlier. It just makes no sense to me. And Daniel, I couldn't help but to notice the comedy of it. And let me take a direct quote from Tim Cook, Apple. Or what did Trump say? Apple Tim Cook.
Tim Apple.
Tim Apple. It says, quote unquote, "We do not retaliate or bully people. It's strongly against our customer culture." And I'm thinking, wait a second, are you kidding me? And I pulled this out of a Washington Post article, Reid Albergati. Apple actually had a document talking about how it was going to hurt Qualcomm financially and put Qualcomm's licensing model at risk. It also said it sought to create evidence by scrupulously licensing other less expensive patents to make Qualcomm's look more expensive. And then finally, Apple said it would selectively filter a group of patent licenses for the most desirable deals, using these patents as evidence as comparable disputes with others. And we didn't hear too much about that because if you remember the day after this came out in what I call the ODM trial down in San Diego, Apple settled with Qualcomm. And I don't know if it was this evidence was way too spicy and it was going to hurt the Apple brand, or it was Intel decided that it was going to stop doing motives. But anyways, the comedy of some of the things that were discussed, I couldn't ignore, and I had to bring up here.
Oh yeah, those are great points, Pat. I also thought it was interesting how Tim Cook also segmented a premium smartphone tier for his lawsuits with the lawsuits that Apple had with Qualcomm. But suddenly that tier no longer was relevant when talking about domination of a certain market. So these guys are great. There's a reason they make a fortune, Pat. They know what they're doing. And listen, to some extent, you want to stay a million miles away and never buy a car from these guys. And to some extent, you just kind of got to respect the audacity that these CEOs have. I mean, Zuckerberg, I feel like if you shook his hand, you'd have to count your fingers. But, at the same time, I mean, it's hard. This is not an easy thing to get right. And, it's easy we have a fun job because we just get to, elaborate, pontificate, envision, dream. But anyways, these guys have to run these businesses and it's hard. And, they're building things and they're proud and they don't want to give away the markets that they've grown. But the double standards are funny. The hypocrisy is everywhere. And darn it, regulators, can you fix like the major problems? And then can we come back to this? Because, the last thing I want right now is to not have my tech. Because I mean, I can't leave my house. At least let me have my tech. All right. Let me have my tech. That's what we're going to call this episode. Thanks everybody out there. Pat, great job. Great analysis as always. Appreciate everyone listening in on the 6-5 podcast. I was used to saying the summit. Hit that subscribe button. Join us. Stick with us. We're going to post more every week. We'll have more interviews. We'll have more summits, more content. We appreciate every one of you out there for joining us, being part of our community. For more tech and more insights, check this out. Stick with us. But we got to go. Bye-bye.